Welcome to the Bayou City Soccer Podcast. Whether inside or outside the loop, we are talking everything soccer in Houston. Y'all ready? Let's get it.
Welcome in to a special edition of the Bayou City Soccer Podcast. I'm Dustin Richardson. MLS Cup playoffs, and we're pleased to be joined today by Sounders FC radio guy. You can hear him on their pregame, postgame, their weekly show. He's Jackson Feltz. Jackson, thanks for joining the show tonight.
Dustin, appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, we have a little bit of lag with my audio, so when you hear Jackson answer me a couple seconds later, that's why. It's just my crappy Wi-Fi down here. But let's get right into the matchup. I know Sounders and Dynamo, everyone here looking forward to it. For you guys, it seems like it's kind of old hat now. Seattle, you guys miss the playoffs only, I think, one time in their existence. So how's the feeling, kind of going into this first round of the playoffs?
Yeah. It's, I think, fairly good. I wouldn't say anybody here is feeling great, considering we're coming off of a decision day 1-1 draw to the Portland Timbers that, I think we've been playing such good soccer. And even in that decision day game against the Timbers, we played really good soccer. But to not come away with a win in that, to not, cinch up a CONCACAF Champions Cup spot, to not get Cascadia Cup, which is our kind of regional trophy between us, the Timbers, and the Vancouver Whitecaps, to not do any of those things was pretty frustrating. So the vibes are good. They're not great. On the really good side, we have Brian Schmetzer, our head coach, get a contract extension. Jackson Reagan is a Defender of the Year finalist. Vibes are good in those regards, and I think we're all excited to be in the playoffs and be able to be a top 4 seed. Because 2 months ago, Dustin, the whole element was, all right, can we get a top 4 seed? We've been kind of bouncing around those middle seeds for so long. We got a top 4 seed, but then now we're facing the Dynamo, which was the team, of the 3 teams we went into decision day thinking we could face, which was Colorado, Minnesota, and Houston. I said on my show, I said on our post-game show, Houston's the team I least want to face of those 3. So we got Houston. And then LAFC, if we happen to get by you, is the next opponent. So it's good vibes. It's not great vibes because we sure would have wished we had seen Minnesota and the LA Galaxy, but it is you guys there with the Dynamo and LAFC, so sucker's life.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because the Dynamo got the late winner against the Galaxy on decision day, which put them into into 5th, and against Seattle. And if they would have drawn that game, they would have gotten Real Salt Lake. I think a lot of Dynamo fans maybe preferred RSL to Seattle. So it's interesting kind of how that shook out. But Dynamo Sounders, they've played twice this year already, and 2 good games, I think. 2-2 here in Houston when the Dynamo had a 2-0 lead, and then the 1-0 loss up in Seattle. Just what do you remember from those games?
Yeah, I remember
earlier this season,
specifically up down in Houston, I should say. It was kind of the 2 goals giving up and then the fight back, and it kind of was one of the games that really kind of, I wouldn't say kicked off, but kept establishing the lore of a guy named Paul Rothrock. Where we see Paul Rothrock continue to have big moments this season. And he has earned himself a starting spot on this club because of things like he did in Houston, where he scores a spectacular goal. I went and watched that again this morning, just to kind of get the vibes going for this matchup. And what a freaking goal it was. And then Jackson Reagan as well, with a goal. And I think that's the game where we're kind of like, okay, this team has a lot of fight in them. And if we're going to get a top 4 seed, we need games like this. We need results like this. And it's part of a summer where the Sounders went, something I want to say it was something like 12-2-3. I might be off on those numbers exactly, but ridiculous. Second best record in the second half of the season, only to Miami. So we have been a ridiculously hot team, and it's because of results like we had there in Houston, where it is just the fight of the team. And we are such a team now where we know if we go down 1-0, 2-0, we can come back in those games and force PKs after 90 minutes. We've done it before. We can do it again. Then the game here, I think, it's funny, Dustin. I don't put a lot of stock into the game here, to be honest, because you are without Ponce and you're without Hector Herrera. And those two players are such difference makers with the Dynamo. I don't mean to get into too much for you guys, but not having Herrera for a team that outpossesses everybody in the league, not having that guy in the middle of the field changes the entire dynamic of the game. So yeah, Sounders won 1-0, and we were able to kind of hold you guys, and you got your possession in the second half. Didn't have any great chances, but really, how much of that is influenced by the fact that Herrera didn't play? I think enormously. So it's very hard to put really much of any stock into that game because it's going to be such a different functioning Dynamo team that comes to Seattle on Monday.
Yeah, in the Dynamo team, a very possession-based team. I know we've talked about Ben Olsen and kind of his MO over the years being a defensive team that keeps teams off the ball, keeps them from scoring. But it's actually Seattle who has allowed the least amount of goals this season. Dynamo are second in the Western Conference, but Seattle least amount of goals in the regular season in all of MLS. You mentioned Jackson Reagan, Yamar, obviously probably could have been in that Defender of the Year discussion as well, but what has it been about their defense that's kind of propelled them this season?
It starts with those two guys, Jackson and Yamar. Those two at center back spots have been so good. They've really, I think Jackson Reagan, the first 10 games or so of the year, he was a little bit up and down. And then once he kind of got his stride, he really came on and we played so consistently. He's such a good player with the ball at his feet. Really wonderful passing player. And then, it was a little bit surprised that Jackson got the finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. I think Yamar, if it's just me, my vote for the best 11, Yamar was in that, Jackson wasn't. So I think that for me, it's an element where I think Yamar may be the more complete center back, but Jackson has the goals this year. He has, I think just more of a weapon in that regard. I think that Jackson Reagan has had some big plays. He's obviously United States, he was in their camp in January and got injured immediately, could very easily be back in a camp next January. So he has kind of that kind of momentum building around the name Jackson Reagan. He's a local kid. It's a very, very good story. But both of those two together, they pair so well. They play off of each other really nicely. And then you just add Nuhu, you're probably the best defensive fullback in the league, off to their left. And Alex Roldan is a sneaky good defensive right back. Alex Roldan loves to get up the field. He's more of an offensive right back than he is a defensive right back, but he can sneakily play some solid defense. So you add the four together, then you add Stephen Fry. Then and because nobody's giving Stephen Fry credit, I'll quickly make sure everybody knows. Second all time in Major League Soccer for regular season shutouts ever. So he never gets his credit. Never has won goalkeeper of the year. Continuously gets gypped on that. So we have Fry in goal, and then you have a defensive midfield of Obed Vargas, Mexican national team, of Christian Roldan, former U.S. national team, of Joao Paulo, our Brazilian engine room in the midfield, and it's the combination of the three of them with everybody else. And it just functions and works great to hold teams to not get anything.
Yeah, a lot of ways they're kind of similar to the Dynamo in that they have Mikael, who has gotten some love for Defender of the Year, best 11 from people. Sviatchenko, Eric Sviatchenko has been a great center back. And then they have Griffin Dorsey, who's very attacking on the right, and Franco Escobar, who's a more defensive guy on the left, and a veteran goalkeeper like Steve Clark. So it's interesting that how they kind of mirror each other almost. But offensively for Seattle, I think one of the interesting points, and we talked to Ben Olsen about this, Raul Ruidiaz kind of has faded away, and Jordan Morris in the striker position, Jordan Morris as a number 9, he's kind of taken on new life this season.
He has. I mean, the really the element of that turned around this entire Sounders season from the struggles of the first, first part of the first half of the season, first 10 games or so, to the entire second half, and why Albert Rusnak has as many goals and assists as he has. It's why Jordan really was unlocked this season. It's a pairing of Albert and Jordan together. They play off of each other. They figured out how to play off of each other so well. And Raul never really played off of Albert Rusnak that well. They didn't. I don't think they worked together necessarily in tandem as well as Jordan and Albert do. So that switch changed everything. And then once Raul was demoted to backup striker, it sort of became the question of all right, what is his role here? Is he a guy that comes off the bench in the 80th minute? Well, we're winning a bunch of games, so we don't necessarily need Raul. So he didn't make as many appearances. He didn't have as many chances for goals. There's the element of he was injured for off and on here and there, and little things here, little things there. If it wasn't one thing, it was another thing for Raul in the second half of the season. So it just whatever it was, he wasn't getting those opportunities. And then you look at the types of goals he scored in the start of the year. The types of goals were penalty kicks, Panenka penalty kicks. They're long distance goals. He scored one from like 45 or 55 yards in Philadelphia, one from about 22 out that won a game at Portland in May. So it was long distance golazos from Raul. So it wasn't like Raul was getting behind defenders and making really impressive runs. He wasn't doing that. He's picking up a ball and firing off a Golazo, or he's hitting a Panenka from the spot. So it wasn't like Raul. I think Raul's season overall, and we'll see if he's back next year. I think that the high confidence is that he is gone when the season's over. But the element is all right. Like, what is Raul now? And even entering the playoffs, the question is, what can Raul even give you?
Yeah, and when you look at this Dynamo team from the Sounders' perspective, they never won in Seattle. It's a tough place to play to begin with, but this is a team has struggled there, to put it bluntly. But when you look at this Dynamo team, Hector Herrera, Ezequiel Ponce, you mentioned Coco Carrasquilla, who just was named CONCACAF Player of the Year. What about this Dynamo team? Where do you see kind of a way for them to break down this Sounders team?
The way to break down the Sounders team, I think, is to get them on the counter. I think you got to cede possession. You got to let the Sounders attack. You got to get Al Roldan up the field. You got to even get Nuhu maybe a little overconfident and have him get up the field. Catch Jackson or Yamon out of place. Which is all to say, like, it's very hard to do. It's very hard to do all of these things at once. And that's why the Sounders lead the MLS in goals conceded. It's very, very hard to score against them. And if you happen to get past everybody, then you just have to beat Stephen Fry. And also, not to mention, you have help defending. The great thing about Jordan Morris at forward is, he used to be a winger and he knows how to work defensively. Jordan knows how to get back and put in a good shift in that regard. So if he is at all in a good position, he can track back. You have Christian, who grew up learning from a guy named Ozzy Alonso, who's one of our absolute favorites here, and he has defensive chops and a bite in him. So everybody knows how to work defensively. That's if there's one mark of a Brian Schmetzer team, it's a team that knows how to defend like hell, and this team does, and they constantly do year after year after year. So the way to do it for Houston, it's a tough spot because you got to play outside of your game, I think, Dustin, to score, and that's cede possession. Let the Sounders get up the field, get them out of positions, and then break on the counter. The questions that I have for you are, does Houston have the speed to break the Sounders on a counter? Are you open as a team to ceding possession, and playing different than Ben Olsen likes to play them overall? Because if you can't do either of those things, then it's going to be hard to score in any of these games.
Yeah, Ben Olsen is very possession centric, and it's kind of against his MO to not want to have the ball. Herrera, Carrasquilla, Artur, those guys just kind of link up so much. Aliou Ibrahim, who is their left wing, it played well in that first game here against Seattle. He's kind of their their breakout guy, him and Dorsey on the wings. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. The chess match between Schmetzer and Olsen here. Like you said, Schmetzer just got an extension, and he's arguably one of the best coaches we've seen in some time. Him and Olsen is going to be an interesting matchup as well.
It will, completely. I mean, seeing how they kind of build off possession. I mean, honestly, knowing how good of a possession-based team Houston is, the first 15 minutes are going to be very interesting to see, that chess match and see who does take the first run of possession. Because obviously there will be waves in this game. There will be large 5 to 10 minute waves of one team holding the ball for long stretches, and then it'll go to the other team. And, what are those chances looking like? When Houston, I mean, listen, Dynamo can have possession as much as you want, and you can kick it around the edge of that final third. But if you can't penetrate the final third, and if you can't find the holes between a Christian, between a Jackson, between a Yamar, Alex New, if you can't find those gaps, then you're just going to end up shooting from 20 yards out, and it's going to go over the bar left or right. So, Sounders are very fine, I think, just doing that and saying, listen, we know we have the speed. You can have possession. We have Jordan, we have Albert, and all year it has worked where Jordan has ran behind defenders over and over and over and over again. I'm not, freezing myself. I'm saying over and over and over again. He just constantly does that to center backs. And, you have good defenders. Your defense is excellent for a reason. It's the speed element of Jordan Morris where this game could break. Because if you get a little overconfident, if you bring Dorsey up too much and you get only 3 guys back and even 2-1 out of position, then Jordan can break you. So that's the matchup for me, is saying in those moments and in those waves of possession, who breaks.
Yeah, it's a very interesting chess match. Like I said, Jackson, before we let you go, the Dynamo made a run to the Western Conference Final last year. They played LAFC well in that game, came up just short of MLS Cup. But this year, I think a lot of people not really expecting the Dynamo to get out of the first round, even against Seattle. Do you see this game? Do you see this series going to 3 games? How do you see it playing out? I know you're a little biased, but how do you see it playing out?
I do see it going 3 games. I absolutely do. I've told folks, and I think I even said this. Maybe I've said this on my show, even though I'll say it right here because I've said it to a lot of people. I think that 2 of these 3 games go to penalty kicks. At least 2 of these 3 games go to penalty kicks, because first, and everybody knows, penalty kicks go straight after 90 minutes. We don't have 120. It's straight to PKs after 90. And for 2 teams that play so much like each other, not a ton of goals scored, very few goals conceded, it could reach an impasse where we do end up getting it. But I mean, look at the first game, 2-2, right? Where clearly it was, I think Latif Blessing's the one who had the big game, right? So it's like, it could absolutely happen where you counter, you get it, you get on the break, you get goals. We have to fight back like we did in Houston. We have to, and boom, you have a 2-2 game, and suddenly you have just a race of who can get the third. So that's possible too. But I think the likelihood is we see more like we saw in Seattle of defensive. This is playoff games too. Defense is going to be, absolutely massive for the importance of both head coaches. So I think you're looking at more low scoring than maybe 2-2, and also just defensive battles that may result in penalty kicks. I think it goes 3 games. I am going to side with my Sounders. I think we get through in 3 because exactly what you said. Houston has never won in Seattle, and I think that is an enormous confidence booster. It's an enormous thing that we can hang our hat on and say, let's just have the home field advantage. The crowd we had for the Portland game, I know we didn't get a result there, but the crowd was incredible. I think we're going to be into it for these playoff games, especially on that Sunday, the 10th, if it goes to game 3. So I wouldn't say I'm feeling great about our chances because, listen, you guys are a fantastic soccer club and you're well coached and great players. But I think it's going to be a really fun chess match series that I'm picking my Sounders, but it's going to be tough.
He is Jackson Feltz, host of Sounders Weekly, Sounders pregame, postgame. You can catch him in Seattle. Jackson, we really appreciate the time, and hopefully it's an awesome series for both of us.
Dustin, appreciate it. I'll be down there in Houston next Sunday on the 3rd, so look forward to meeting you and seeing a bunch of Houston fans. Should be a fun one we have out there.
And we will catch you again soon here at Bayou City Soccer. Make sure you check out Bayou City Soccer on all your social medias, BayouCitySoccer.net for all of the latest on Monday's game. We'll see you soon.
Cool.